Hello everyone and welcome to another HAES reading group video. Today we are reading Happy Fat, Taking Up Space in a World That Wants to Shrink You. This is like my third take and for whatever reason I can't say wants to shrink. Well, that time I managed to say it. But for whatever reason that string of words was not, I wasn't able to. Oh my god, Lena Dunham liked it. So this should be interesting. Okay. Hi, I'm Fat. I'm also 30 years old, Danish, and a Scorpio. I am a person who only recently felt adult enough to buy non-plastic plants. I have owned more instruments, 3, than I have learned to play, 0. My favorite colors are red and purple. I have worked in an antique bookshop, a bakery, a sex shop, where they either believed me when I said I was older than I was, or just didn't care. A video store, from which I stole sweets. A posh grocery shop. A kindergarten, from which I got fired when the children asked me to pretend to be a sleeping grown-up and I actually fell asleep for an hour. That's fucking dangerous. You fell asleep on the job? And various charity organizations as both a street fundraiser and a telemarketing fundraiser. Just to go back, like, how in the fuck do you fall asleep in a kindergarten? Like, this is a genuine question. How the fuck do you fall asleep in kindergarten? But, yeah, no offense, I would fire your ass too if you fell asleep. Like, even if it was just a para position, because I don't think from this string of jobs that she's given, I don't think that she went through the qualifications to become a teacher. But how the hell do you fall asleep in a kindergarten? That was my last normal job before I started doing stand-up comedy. I have won a few big stand-up comedy awards, such as the Edinburgh Comedy Award for Best Newcomer. I have a poster on my wall of a flying llama saying "Que pasa," and I laugh every time I see it. I had my first article published when I was 13. It was about the pop singer Pink, and it was in a Danish teen magazine called Viung. I doubt I pronounced that right. I had my first 2-page spread published in a free newspaper called Metro Express when I was 15. It was about how to be the best Westlife fan. I love musical theater, and I love going to the cinema alone. I prefer dogs to cats. I prefer dogs to most humans. I am many, many things other than my weight. I am sure you are too. I don't wish for my fatness to define me any more than I want kindergarten sleeper, Westlife fan, or dog lover to define me. But when people see me, they see the fat. They judge and notice the fat. Despite this, they rarely say the word fat. That is why it's part of the title of this book, Fat. I say it as often as I can, fat, in the hopes that the more I say it, the less scary it will seem. We all have fat on our bodies. It's only the volume of it that differs from person to person. Fat is essentially energy, fat is protecting our organs, and fat is just a descriptive word. The negative connotation came later. Hissed at us by a parent, shouted from a moving vehicle, or written in yellow all-caps letters on the front cover of a magazine as a warning. A lot of effort is put into denying fat. Phrases like, "You have fat, you are not fat," and "I'm not fat, I'm just easy to see." The intention is sweet, but it does nothing but reaffirm that fat is bad. This is called fat phobia, the fear of fatness. This is a message we see constantly, from adverts on television through fat characters in movies who either don't exist or are portrayed negatively, through your mother asking if you've gained weight with a sneer, your friends talking about their new diets, the high street clothes shops not catering to a size bigger than 12, through the lack of fat people on the covers of magazines and the constant news stories telling us that the obesity epidemic is coming to get us all. Everything has the basic underlying message that it is positive to be thin and negative to be fat. So just a couple of notes. Your friends talking about their diets is not necessarily a fear of becoming fat. They could be making lifestyle changes. They could be wanting to adjust their eating habits and eating less sugar. They could be doing a fucking ton of things. This is you being judgy. It's you being judgy. As for the high street clothing shops, fashion has always been a very thin business. Like, in general, if you want to be a model, you have to be exceptionally thin. And so that kind of trickles down to general, like, high fashion street clothes. So the fact that they even go up to 12 is saying something. It's just part of the industry. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind if... I know in certain countries they put, like, a minimum BMI for their models, so that way fashion industries couldn't make their models be dangerously thin and make it, like, a health risk. I would like that for the US. I would like a general requirement that the models have to be at a healthy weight. I would like that. Everything else, it's just they're looking for a certain look. And I'm sorry, but a healthy weight body just dresses nicer. Of course, if a woman is thin, she will be wrong in other ways. She will be too thin, not the right shape of thin, not the right height, not have a large enough gap between her thighs, and she needs to smile more but not too much, because that would be slutty. She needs to laugh, but not at her own jokes, preferably men's jokes. She needs to wear a dress that's not too long, because then she is a prude, but also not too short, because then she's a whore. Her breasts have to be big, but not vulgar big, and not big in length. And she most importantly has to never complain about these extreme and impossible beauty standards and society's wish to make her into an accessory. There is a growing amount of pressure on men to look a certain way as well, but usually they are given a slightly bigger pass than women are. Yet, even if they do not get a big pass, fat men are still allowed to be fat. Fat is frowned upon, regardless of who embodies it and regardless of how much they embody it. Trashy magazines will find even the slightest bulge on the stomach of a celebrity swimming in the ocean and plaster her all over the front cover of their magazine as an example of someone breaking the rules by not staying thin. For the record, the only ones that I see do this anymore, wonder when this was published, are like tabloids that everyone knows. It's the most recent edit, but no, it was just published in 2019. The only ones that I really see do that anymore are like the really tabloidy magazines that everyone knows is shit. Like, I'm not saying that makes it right, but let's not equate general fashion magazines to those tabloids, because they're not quite the same thing. Fat is perceived to be an exclusively negative thing, and it isn't, and it doesn't have to be. That's the essence of this book. Fat is not an inherently negative word. Fat is, if anything, neutral, but it can be beautiful. It can be loved. It can be absolutely magnificent. You can be fat and sexy, fat and healthy, fat and happy. I love my body. I love my stomach with all of its red stretch marks hanging like an impractical bum bag over my thick, fleshy thighs, which spread out and drape slightly over the sides when I sit in a chair. My double and sometimes triple chin, the jiggly flesh on my arms where there are, in theory, somewhere deep down triceps. There is so much fat there that I can grab a fistful of it. My body is many, many fistfuls of fat. When I wear a bra, bulges of fat pop out right above the strap under my armpits, creating side boobs. My cheeks are thick, so thick that when I smile, they almost cover my eyes completely. I smile a lot. I would tell you how much I weigh, but I don't know. I stopped weighing myself years ago. Here's the thing. I'm not saying that she shouldn't be... I think there's something worth being comfortable and confident regardless of your size. I do think that that's something... I don't think there's a problem with that. I do think, though, that she seems to take pride in how fat she is, which I find a little weird. Like, she talks about, being fistfuls of fat, her cheeks so thick that they almost cover her eyes when she smiles. It's just that those things personally would concern me, and I don't think that it's a good idea to stop weighing yourself entirely unless you have like an eating disorder trigger attached to that. But at the same time, live your life how you want. So I guess who am I to say shit, really? I do have a problem. There's a little bit of a victim narrative, a little bit going along with this, but we'll see if that continues or becomes more extreme or overt. I have never been thin, and I will never be thin. I am a fat person, and I love my body. I feel lucky to be able to say that. It has never come easy. It has taken a lot of work and a lot of time to get here. I often meet people who are incredibly puzzled that I can love this body. Taking the world into account, how we are taught to see bodies and judge bodies, I understand the puzzlement, but I am quite sure I can explain it. I want to tell you what I have learned and how I got here. Essentially, this book is a beginner's guide, a look into the world of being a fat person. More specifically, what it is like to be me, a white, pansexual, West European person. On top of which, I come across as straight, meaning that people can't see all the internal feelings of, oh, actually, I want to kiss girls, and oh, actually, I'd like to kiss everyone. I am, at this moment in time, non-disabled. I don't know why I find that sentence so fucking strange. It almost sounds like she plans to become disabled. Am I wrong? That's a fucking weird sentence. Just say I'm not disabled. Like you don't have to phrase it in a way that, I could be disabled in the future. Like it just seems so. Maybe I mean I might be a nitpicking bitch, but that's a weird way to phrase it. In the moment of writing this book, I call myself fat. There are loads of different terms you can use to describe your body, but the most commonly used ones within fat activism are big, thin, small fat, fat, super fat, and infinifat. So this is the first time I've heard big, thin. What's big, thin? That's something we would look up if we could choose this book. I might still look it up, quite frankly. I'm curious, what's big, thin? My guess is big, thin would probably be between a size 10 and 14. It might be, big, thin is probably, so like big, thin, small, fat is probably within the realm of like what other people refer to as mid-size. It's hard to define. All bodies are so vastly different that you can't really make an official definition. Two people weighing the same could look completely different and therefore be treated very differently by society. I actually do agree with that. I'm fortunate in that I carry my weight pretty well. I know some people that carry their weight almost entirely in their stomach, and it's unfortunate. So I do agree that people can weigh the same but look very different and carry their weight differently. That either make them look fat in an unattractive way, and that can carry... I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it a stigma, but it's not... They probably don't get as much positive attention. One person who is a size 28 could fit into an airplane seat, whereas another person who is a size 24 could not. Okay, I could see that being true depending on the weight distribution. Yeah, or the fat distribution. I am somewhere in between fat and super fat. I can buy clothes in most online plus-size clothes shops, but I cannot fit into most seats that have armrests. Infinifats can definitely not do any of those things. Big thins never have to worry about either. This book is very much from a West European perspective and primarily deals with West European culture. It's important for me to say this, and I guess for you to read this, because it is worth noting that there are other viewpoints out there. Everyone knows that there's fucking other viewpoints out there. I gotta be honest, I don't really care for this whole preface. It feels like fluff. You just say, this is how I'm fat strictly from my perspective. Boom. Boom. That encompasses everything. You've already let us know that you are pansexual but straight passing, and you're West European, meaning you're white, and that you're basically, I mean, we can see from your picture, I'm assuming this is you, Sophie, we can see that you're white. So, like, you don't have to do all this preface. It's always important to be aware of privilege, be it your own privilege or the privilege of the author whose book you're reading. But it is not for me to speak on behalf of others. Instead, I talk about me and my experiences. Over the course of the last decade, I have read books and articles, studies, and opinion pieces. I have watched documentaries and attended conferences, interviewed experts, scholars, and highly experienced activists all about fat phobia and its causes and its consequences. So even though my perspective is my own, and as everything human made, fundamentally subjective, the only reason I felt comfortable writing this book is that I feel like I have enough empirical knowledge to back up what I will be telling you. Throughout the book, I have incorporated chats that I have had with people with different life experiences from my own. It is also a way of showing intersectionality at play. I have talked to Stephanie something, who is a dark-skinned, black, and fat woman from London, and who, just by existing, has to deal with fat phobia, racism, and colorism. There is Kevon Bay, a fat trans queer man from Portland, US, who has to live with fat phobia, transphobia, queer, and homophobia. And Matilda Ibini, a black woman in a wheelchair from London who has to deal with racism, colorism, body shaming, and ableism. You can't separate just one marginalization on its own, which is why I urge you to not skip these chats. They are all incredible people whom I very much enjoyed talking to. If their life experiences are not similar to your own, it is still important to include them in your journey. I'm so grateful for their input. I also have a chat with Dinah something, a Danish cultural historian who focuses on fatness, who is here to fix one of our most common misconceptions within our ideas of fatness. I am very excited and proud to share her viewpoint with you. This book is for everyone, absolutely everyone, but I have lived as a fat woman. I relate to fat women, I relate to queer people, people who sometimes feel like they are on the outskirts of society. I have written this book for everyone, but if you are not fat, if you are a cis man, you may at times feel left out or unattended to. This is not because I am purposely leaving you out, but I have lived for 30 years now consuming art and media made by thin, white, straight, cis men who have subconsciously or consciously primarily addressed other thin, white, straight, cis men. And rarely have they tried to include me or my fellow outsiders into their world as anything but the joke or the accessory. So not saying that there aren't harmful depictions in media of, I'm not speaking specifically fat, I'm speaking just in general. Certain types of people put whatever label you want on it, there's probably a negative depiction out there. If we're talking about letting people into their world, though, a lot of people just kind of make what they want. A way around that is to seek out and find those that are making what you want and give them attention. And if they're selling something, give them some of your money if you can, and build up them that way. Build up the representation you want to see that way. Yet when asked, they would probably also claim that their art was for everyone as well. So that is what I'm saying to you now. This book is for everyone. If you do not relate to being fat, if you do not relate to being a woman, or if you do not relate to being an outsider in any way, you should still read it. I just don't pander to you. We fatties have very little that is made by us for us. So if you are fat, this is particularly for you. The fat, the weird, the queer, the neuroatypical, the confused, and the excluded. In this book, I am going to talk about growing up as a fat child, a fat teenager, and becoming a fat adult. I am going to talk about dieting and, most importantly, failing at it. I am going to talk about the ridicule and humiliation, the ostracism, and the trauma, the rejection, and the heartbreak. I am going to talk about belly rolls, stretch marks, and the red marks you get between your thighs when they have been rubbing together. This is not a book about body positivity. I will mostly use the term fat liberation. Body positivity gained momentum fairly recently. It became the TV adverts showing slightly chubby, at best, models using certain lotions or tights. It came with a lot of caveats. You can be slightly bigger than a size 10, but it's preferable if you have an hourglass figure. The fat is acceptable if it is in the right places and if there is not too much of it. Super fat people are still not represented, and there is a noticeable focus on fatties who exercise and eat salads. Another caveat: you can be fat if you are at least trying to lose weight. It may seem like there has been a lot of progress recently, but it isn't fair to say that the progress has been made for fat people. We may have more adverts on TV featuring what they call real women, yawn, but at the same time, clothing brands are removing their plus-size collections from their physical stores, and the world seems to want us to exist less and less. For example, only as recently as March 2018, Thai Airlines banned fat people from using business class. Here's the thing about the clothing argument yet again, because someone had referenced in a different video of mine when I had said, that that disabled people aren't given much representation, even though they say that they're talking for marginalized bodies. If you want to expand on that, there's certain needs that disabled people have that aren't met by traditional clothing. If you're in a wheelchair, taking on and off like a jacket can be really cumbersome and tiring, and so having engineered clothing that is more meant for people who have to use certain devices would be really helpful. But they don't even, as far as I know, granted, I haven't looked because I don't have any of that stuff that I have to deal with, so it could be out there. If it is, I don't know about it. But I don't know any clothing that is designed to work with a wheelchair or work with an insulin pump or work with XYZ, whatever you want to put in there, have to work around. So you simply not having the variety you want, you just talked about acknowledging your privilege. Well, here's a privilege that you have that you're complaining about. So, and granted, that is a little bit of whataboutism. Like, I know that, but I just get tired of hearing them complain about not having the same variety of clothing options. Fortunately, due to social media, we can control a lot of what we see. In the back of the book, I have a list of some fat role models and fat activists who are all making a big difference. But when you look at popular media, your average TV commercial or women's magazine, or when you look at the news, the very best we can hope for is a fat person struggling to lose weight or a thin person in a fat suit. And maybe a message from some beauty brand saying, "Buy this lotion for real women," which then features a few cis women who are all a size 10 to 12. Maybe one of them has short hair so the brand looks super diverse. That's body positivity. This is also far away from what the original Fat Liberation movement stood for. By using the word body instead of fat, we easily lose sight of what the core of the body image issue is: the hatred of fatness and fat people. Okay, no, wait, but that's not necessarily the core of the body image issues. That's fucking self-centered right there. Like, I would not say that is the core of body image issues. I think it changes vastly from person to person. If the core of body image issues, like the biggest core, oh my god, I'm sorry, that messed with my brain a little bit, because I'm like, I think if you went through all cosmetic surgery, I don't think liposuction would outrank nose jobs. Like, people have body insecurities for a huge variety of reasons. It can be complexion, it can be the structure of their nose, it can be the way their chin looks, it can be so much. I mean, I think to say that, like, the core of it is fatness, don't get me wrong, that's probably that is like a big thing, and I'm not saying that it's not. It is definitely a big thing, but it's to say that it's the core makes it seem like it is the biggest chunk and everything else is extraneous, and I don't think it's that way. People have massive body image issues for a variety of reasons. And it can be things like stretch marks. I'm insecure about my own stretch marks. I have stretch marks on my shoulders, chest, and hips, and I hate them, and I'm super insecure about them. I'm probably more insecure about those than I am about my weight. And like just because apparently I'm going to just air out my insecurities here on the internet. But like, I have large pores. My skin has far more texture to it than I would like. And if I could change one thing, like just magic snap my fingers and change one thing, it would be the size of the pores on my face, because they always feel like they're super noticeable and huge, and I hate it. And I would rather just work hard to lose the weight and figure myself out weight-wise, because I can't change the size of my pores. I can't change the way the texture of my skin. So I don't know. I just think that I just don't like how it claims that like fat is the, because no, even here they say using the word body instead of fat for like body positivity. It just erases the large variety of issues that come with body image issues. So let's go ahead and start off from that last sentence again. By using the word body instead of fat, we easily lose sight of what the core of the body image issue is: the hatred of fatness and fat people. I really don't think so, but I don't want to go back off on a tangent. By allowing the focus to rest on the body positivity movement, we are allowing wealthy companies to cash in on a fight that has been fought by fat activists since the 1960s. Fat activism is very rarely about the individual struggle with their self-esteem or feelings about their stretch marks. It is about changing the anti-fat bias, particularly the way it affects fat people politically. But here's the thing, they talk about stretch marks. Stretch marks don't necessarily come strictly from weight gain. A lot of my stretch marks were a result of puberty. So stretch marks aren't inherently tied to weight insecurity or fear of like being fat. Just putting it out there. And a lot of the fat activism that started out, I believe, oh man, who did the deep dive? I want to say it Funty Times? It was Funty Times, Nadia Nymph, or Hotep Flotep. I don't remember which one. But one of them like did this kind of deep dive into the beginning of fat activism. And I think it was Funty Times. And they found that the whole fat activists movement were started by men that just sexually preferred bigger women, and so it was this campaign to where they wouldn't be teased for liking fat women. For example, it is still legal to discriminate against a person based on their weight in the UK. 49 states in the US, the only state that has made it illegal is Michigan, and a majority of countries all over the world. We are not a protected group. Fat people are, on average, paid less and have a harder time getting employed. So where there is definitely a reason for also talking about the individual self-esteem, I go fully at it in the chapter How to Love Your Body, for example. It is so utterly important that we remember and understand where the whole thing started, the incredible people who fought for us and before us. The fat activism movement started in the U.S. in 1967. 500 fat people had a fat-in Central Park in New York, where they ate ice cream and burned diet books. The National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance was founded in America in 1969 by a guy called Bill Fabry in response to discrimination against his wife. Again, I think those people were focusing on it more so that way they wouldn't... You know what? I'm pretty sure it was Funty Times. Look for her video. She does a much better job of explaining it than I could. Today, NAAFA is seen more as a politically motivated group, but during the 60s they were much more of a social club for fat people. The San Francisco chapter of the NAAFA were a bunch of wild and awesome lesbians and queer women many of whom were Jewish, who started becoming vigilant about fat hatred in the scientific community and wanted to fix that. NAAFA considered this to be a bit too dramatic, so the San Francisco chapter splintered off and in 1972 became the Fat Underground. They coined phrases such as, "A diet is a cure that doesn't work for a disease that doesn't exist." In 1983, the Fat Underground and the New Haven Fat Liberation Front released the book Shadow on a Tightrope, a collection of poems, articles, and essays by and about fat women and their lives in the UK. The London Fat Women's Group was started in 1985. The terms used around the time were fat liberation, fat pride, and fat power. The fat liberation movement, alongside the fat pride and fat power movement, was not too bothered with how the individual felt about their body. It was a critique and a fight directed against the structural oppression and discrimination and the inherent fat phobia, the hatred of fat bodies in society. The focus was not on how much you should love your curves, they just wanted to be free. In 1973, two fat activists, Judy Free Spirit and Aldebaran, I don't think I got that right, but okay, released the Fat Liberation Manifesto, which you can read at the back of this book, and it's still as relevant today as it was back then. That would make this worth reading for sure, to see this, because I'm surprised it's not referenced more though. If there's a Fat Liberation Manifesto, I'm curious about that. Around the same time, a lot of fat liberation and body revolution politics were also being discussed by black feminists and black womanists. Fat black women have had to fight sexism, racism, and fat phobia, attacks on the color of their skin, their perceived gender, and the size of their bodies. In a 1972 edition of the American feminist magazine Ms., Johnny Tillman wrote, "I'm a woman, I'm a black woman, I'm a poor woman, I'm a fat woman, I'm a middle-aged woman, and I am on welfare. In this country, if you're any one of those things, you count less as a human being. If you're all of those things, you don't count at all, except as a statistic." In 1984, Guyanese? British poet Grace Nichols released the book, The Fat Black Woman's Poems. It is worth noting that the movement that has now been overtaken by corporations was started by women who were primarily fat, Jewish, black, and queer, none of whom would be likely to feature in the adverts for lotions by these body positivity companies, or would be able to buy clothes in a shop using curvy models to promote body positivity. They took the fat and replaced it with body to erase the very existence of fat people and make it more palatable and sexy to consumers. They then took the searing and urgent call to arms that is the word liberation and changed it to positivity, almost as if to say, "Shh, sit down, don't make a fuss, smile, and be still quite thin." So, no, that feels like you're reaching greatly. To me, I don't see the connection between what you just put and then the body positivity movement. To me, this seems like a big reach. It seems to me that maybe there was a second offshoot that you guys aren't realizing was there, from people who were more concerned with the things that they could not change at all, called it body positivity, and now y'all are mad because that took off and your fat liberation movement didn't. And we all know how women love to be told to smile. A good thing about the body positivity movement is that it is most likely what led you to my book. I am very much a spreader of love yourself rhetorics. I use hashtags such as happy fat, and I have a chapter in this book called How to Love Your Body. I have been featured in many body positivity babes you must follow on Instagram articles, and I would love for you to love your body because it is a wonderful feeling. But don't get me wrong, I need you to love your body so you can join me in the revolution. So one day you'll join me in a park for ice cream and the diet book burning like those who came before us. But let's not focus on the faraway future right now. This is just the introduction, where I wrap you in a blanket, introduce myself and the topic of fat, and prepare you for what you are about to read. You can plan the revolution when you have finished the book. When I set out to write this book, I wanted first and foremost to put into words what being fat has been like for me. In doing small, intimate readings for the initial draft to an audience, I learned that I am very much not alone with these feelings. It made me feel less alone, and I sincerely hope you will feel the same way when reading this book. As I mentioned, you will find a whole chapter full of advice on how to love your body. What a grandiose statement. I will debunk all the damaging myths about fatness and health, like many others have done before me, like so many others will have to do in years to come. I will reach out to you non-fats reading this. You get your very own chapter. I wanted you to know how you can be a better friend to fat people. Oh, also, I wanted to refer to myself as the Bang Lord at least once, and drag a lot of people who wronged me because I am vengeful. I never forget, and I latch onto grudges like I am my brother 20 years after I convinced him to sell his shares in Google because it would never take off. Hashtag Yahoo forever. That kind of tracks with the Fat Liberation movement, don't you think? They all seem very vengeful and petty and hold on to grudges over small things. There are also lovely illustrations sprinkled all over the book by the amazing fat illustrator Molly Cronin. Before you start this book, I want you to do something that I often have had to do throughout writing it. Put your hands on your stomach or your thighs, your upper arms, your double chin, or whatever area of your body that you have struggled with the most, and close your eyes. Give yourself a nice little cuddle. Whisper, "You are going to be okay. I love you." Because chances are you will have said a lot of crap to your body in your life, and we are about to dig into some of that. I'd love for your body to come with you. If this is all too cutesy-wootsy and wishy-washy and it makes you roll your eyes at me, fine. I can all too well respect that. I am making myself a little bit sick by writing it, but just consider trying it a few times throughout the book and maybe wonder why the very basic action of physically showing yourself and your body affection makes us cringe. We have a long way to go, so let's go. I think it makes a lot of people cringe because it's infantilizing. Welcome to my book. I hope you like it here. We are going to be okay. So I want to go back to the why showing yourself affection makes us cringe. The way this is phrased and the way that it's put, it seems very infantilizing, something that you would say to a child, and so saying it to yourself makes you cringe because it feels like you're babying yourself a little bit. And I think that there's this... I don't think most people want to be treated as children. There are some people that like being treated as children. I can think of a couple people in my life that like to be treated as children, even though they're grown adults. But that's not for everyone. And it's not necessarily about affection. It's about there's a way to show yourself love and to love yourself and to even talk to yourself in comforting ways that is not like you would say to a small child. I would say more, if you need to practice positive self-talk, pretend it's the person that you care about most. And would you talk to them the way you're talking to yourself? And so try to gauge how you talk to yourself in that way. But that's off topic, and we are at the end of this chapter. I think this could be really interesting. I'm actually more tempted to group this with one of the other books. I almost feel like this could possibly be grouped with a Virgie book, but I kind of want to keep Virgie just pure Virgie. Maybe with one of the other I'd have to review. But let me know what you think about this, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.